Good morning, everyone. Warren County's Personnel and Higher Education Committee. I'd like to call that meeting to order.
Warren County's Finance Committee, I'd like to call to order. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
With the chairman serving,
Thank you.
I'd like to call the Washington County Committee to order.
And I'd like to call Washington County's Finance Committee to order. And we might want for a forum at the moment, but it's on its way and it's good to go.
All right. So thanks to everyone for coming today. Welcome. We're here to discuss. We've had several presentations from our friends at SUNY Adirondack. Actually with us, it goes back to about 2 or 3 years, I believe. And our discussion is about our share, the local share, made up of the sponsor share from Washington County, sponsor share from Warren County, and chargebacks. The goal was always to be at 33%, and we're about 26, 27% now. And that's what we're here to discuss today. We have turn it over to Melissa in Washington County. You had a couple comments.
Yes, so we're going to start with a presentation from Dr. Duffy and Anne Marie to give you a little bit of the, I guess, the requested proposal, their formal request for the increase in sponsorship. And then after that, one of the handouts that you received at the door was the worksheet, and that is a result of many meetings and discussions we have had with representatives for both counties to come up with a way to get to the requested amount, which is that $1 million amount. And the smoothest, as we kept referring it to, way possible without a lot of big increases and such. So I guess we'll start with your presentation and then we'll move from there.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're coming off the excitement of yesterday's ribbon cutting for our 4-acre multi-sport athletic complex. Thank you to those who were able to come. They got free hats, so you missed out on the free hats. I'm sorry that they all ran out. I would have brought you one. So, but it was a great day for the college to celebrate a long-standing capital project that was funded a variety of sources. I'm excited to be able to offer that not only for our student athletes and our intercollegiate athletic program, but as a community asset. So if you haven't seen it and you get a minute before you leave today, I invite you to drive over and take a look. It's stunning. So we're going to, my role here is just to do some level setting on why we're here and why this college is so important to the community. I see a lot of friends in the audience, so I think you all know this, but I think it's helpful just as we talk about this very important step forward for our sponsors to share with you all the good success that occurs at this college every day and has for over 60 years. So we'll go ahead and get started. Get started. So one of the questions that sometimes comes up is why were community colleges created? And I get to have the archives in my office, and this little typewritten booklet is a proposed community college for Warren and Washington counties. So this was actually produced in 1958. And as I read it, it's actually full of data that was collected at the time. There was a joint committee that was created at that time, and it was right around the time, of course, that the State University of New York was authorizing community colleges throughout the state. And it's always fascinating when you go back in history and you think not much has changed, because the mission at the time is the mission that we still have today, which was to offer affordable access to higher education in local communities that can provide opportunities for students to prepare for transfer into four-year institutions or to enter the workforce. That's what the committee documented back in the late 1950s, and it's still our mission today. So we're very true to our mission, and I hope you understand how important it is for our community to be able to have access to higher education. And at that time, they said the college would offer day and evening programs, liberal arts, science, and engineering courses for transfer, and for the first 2 years of a 4-year degree, and then also leading to terminal, as they call them at the time, technical programs leading to the associate in applied science. The college would be financed, capital costs 1/2 by the state, 1/2 by the counties, and operation costs 1/3 by the state, 1/3 by the counties, 1/3 by student tuition fees. That was the charge at the time and how the college got started. We, of course, are developing talent, which then, of course, results in economic development and the opportunity for social and economic mobility for the citizens of our counties. And we have lots of examples of that over time. And that's why we were created, and we're still true to that today. It's famous that my computer. This just gives you a lot of snapshot of data, but we have worked with over 450 employers in the area. Our graduates, of course, are prepared in using especially state-of-the-art equipment and facilities. You were one of our important investors in Adirondack Hall, which of course renovated all of our nursing classrooms, our science labs. And of course, we all know how important that nursing program is to our community and will continue to be. We have transfer agreements with many different colleges, over 100, and of course, we encourage and foster opportunities for students to transfer. We have specific agreements, and of course, having SUNY Plattsburgh here as a branch campus, we were one of the first in the state to do that. And it still thrives today. And in fact, Plattsburgh is starting their information security bachelor's completion program this fall. And next fall, we'll be bringing their family. And I can remember it's a very long term.
Human dynamics and family relations.
Thank you, John. Which really is about creating more people to work in the human services field, which we all know continues to have gaps in terms of employees. So Plattsburgh has been a wonderful partner for us and will continue to do so. I thought it might be helpful to not just hear from me, because you hear from me all the time and hear from Anne Marie, but to hear from a couple of our folks that can talk a little bit about our impact. So I invited Jared Humiston, CEO and owner of ADK Techs in Argyle. And Jared's just going to give you kind of an overview of some of the ways in which the college and ADK Techs has been partnering for several years now to meet the needs of the workforce, economic development, and really some of the really cool stuff that our students have been able to do thanks to Jared's partnership. So Jared, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, well, thank you for having me here this morning, Chris. As Dr. Duffy had just said, you know, we've worked together with the college for many years now, and being, you know, an IT company in a rural community, and not just an IT company, but just being, you know, in a rural community in general, you have labor struggles, right? So we've looked at, over the years, of a number of different ways we can, you know, look at our recruiting resources, which is costly. Okay, we can hire and hope, which is what it becomes sometimes. We can use ZipRecruiter, Indeed, we can use some of the online resources, put that out there, go through a number of interviews, ask some questions, go through that process. Or we've looked at, you know, partnering with the local colleges, getting involved with the P-TECH programs all the way in at the high school level, continuing to help develop programs and work with students through internships, and use those avenues to take away some of the hope, get upfront experience with potential candidates, find out what they're capable of, both not just from a skill set perspective, but also from a personality perspective, find out if they're a culture fit, find out if they're a good fit for the team, they work well with our customers. Okay, and so we have found that this approach has been the most cost-effective and most successful, not only for business, but also for employee development. And so this has been a process that we've been working on for many years now, and I think in total, We've hired 14 students out of the program. Many of them are still with us. Some have gone on to start and run other businesses as well and generate, jobs and revenue from their businesses. But being able to work with the college to develop those skill sets to make them more job ready has been huge. Okay, and when you're looking for proof of if those actual skill sets came out of the classroom and were job ready, the best example that I can think of for that was World University Games that just took place this January in Lake Placid. So I don't know if everyone in the room is familiar with those games, but it was it's a college Olympics. So we had 50 nations come in from all over the world, take place in the Lake Placid region, down into Gore, up into Potsdam, SUNY, Canton, SUNY, Potsdam, and Clarkson. Okay, so we had a total of 11 locations. And when we're talking about rural communities and struggling to find skill sets, that was the actual definition of challenge. So we were talking 8 weeks out. There was 3 of us. There was myself, another person on my staff, and one other person that we had hired working on these games. Okay, 8 weeks out. So 6 weeks out, we had 5 people, and it was a little scary. So obviously we've had a close partnership with the college. We were already engaged with the college before that. We were able to get 9 students directly out of the networking and cybersecurity programs, and we're able to put them to work. They jumped right in. We're able to handle venues. We had a young lady and a young man that were they're going to be graduating this semester. They handled what they called the West. As far as I know, there's one up in New York, but they took care of the 3 sites: Potsdam, Clarkson, and Canton, all on their own. We had 3 gentlemen, some with some military experience, had a little bit more life experience, but good skill sets. They took care of Gore. So our 2 farthest most were being taken care of by a total of 5 college students that allowed us to focus on the central region, which is where a majority of the games were. And these 9 students were crucial into helping, put these games on. We had no downtime, 0 minutes of downtime on ESPN's live broadcast. We had 0 cybersecurity events. We monitored 2.07 million login attempts with no breaches, no security incidences. Okay, we were the only organization involved in the games that did not suffer a single cyber event or a single second of downtime. Okay, so when we're talking about, are these skill sets translatable out of the classroom and into industry? Yes. And so we've been able to work with the college over the years to see that investment, to continue to see the quality of students that are coming out of these programs and coming directly into our businesses. So we thank the college for that partnership and for, helping out in that project. It was a great experience for the kids, great experience for the community, and, a lot of upgrades, for the area and whole. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. And thank you.
Very humble. The fact that ADK Techs was one of the primary providers of all IT networking needs for such a large event and multiple venues, I think speaks volumes to him, his leadership, and we're so thankful to be able to partner and be able to provide students for him in those types of situations, and then of course as potential employees. Just wanted to highlight another student, Greenwich, that talks about, I knew I wanted to go to community college first because I wanted to save money. We hear that all the time, but students really acknowledge it. They intend to come here for very specific reasons. And again, we're thankful for being able to provide that education and access. The final speaker that I have to present to you today is Jeremy Dewars, who's here, who is our current coordinator of Adirondack peer-to-peer support services. I read it because it's a long title, and he's administering the PFC Joseph P. Dwyer project, which is a grant-funded effort that both counties allowed us to assume. And we've had a long-standing history of supporting our military veterans in the classroom, This now extends that opportunity so that we can continue to not only support the students that are here, potentially bring new students, but also continue to be a community resource in helping our military veterans. So Jeremy, I asked him to come and just share a little bit about what he's been up to. And by the way, Jeremy is no longer on the Adirondack, so we're thrilled to have him back. Jeremy.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you for having me. My background is quite diverse. Ironically, I was my senior year of high school. I spent quite a bit of time at SUNY Adirondack studying with Rich LaPlante, as a matter of fact, before I went to the Crane School of Music. I was a musician for a long time, and my father passed away halfway through my freshman year up there, so I transferred down to Schenectady and played with some of the area symphonies for a number of years. I wasn't that good. I waited a lot of tables, to put it that way. But then I joined the Marine Corps and saw the world, been all over the place, did a lot of cool things. But when I was medically discharged in 2004, I had planned on making it a career. I was on warrant officer track. You do all the things that you're supposed to do. But then the Marine Corps was like, we can't deploy you anymore. You're done. And it's quite upsetting because you get used to that mindset and working with folks the way you do. And when I got out, I don't want to say I was depressed because I think that's a little bit of a harsh word, but I was really lost. I was very fortunate to have attended SUNY Adirondack, and I hooked up with Dr. Pomecoy and Dr. Murray many years ago, two very bright individuals who really worked me quite hard and prepared me quite well for Skidmore. And Skidmore was a whole different animal. I got my bachelor's there in history and government, and then went on to Union Graduate College. And I was a teacher for about a decade. I taught in Houston for a few years, when the job market wasn't so good up here after I graduated from Union. Then came back, taught at Granville and Hadley Luzerne. And I can say with authority that public schools have a number of issues facing them today. Societal pressures have really forced them to lower standards. And I can say with authority that many kids are graduating high school without proficient skills to be, we'll say, positive force in the workplace. Some of the soft skills that are required are really not being developed because many kids stare at their phones quite often, don't pay much attention. And I will say this, that after teaching for a decade, I see that these kids want to go out and do great things. They're just not being prepared well. And COVID, I think, exacerbated the problem. So now you've got a whole generation of students that are going to be leaving with a high school diploma that aren't necessarily workforce ready. And this is where I think community colleges come in. I always said to my students as I was teaching them, I said, it's all about skills. If you have a skill that someone's going to pay you X amount of dollars per hour to go out and perform this work, then you're okay. Okay. The problem is that they're leaving without these skills and they're not necessarily understanding that. They come here, they're going to be hooked up with a number of professors or other professionals within the college community that are going to help them get to where they need to be. And they're going to be a bit more mature at that point to be able to say, oh, you know what? Okay, I'm going to get off the video game. I'm going to start paying attention to my classes because the college has done, and I can say this again with authority, Taylor does a tremendous amount, really getting our students to make sure they're participating in class, getting their work done. Because stuff that, frankly, the public schools are just like, okay, move on, right? So right now, I think it would be wise to, because I used to show this to my students and it was kind of scary to them. There's a great film called 2 Million Minutes. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it compares 3 different demographics, I would say. So you have American students, Chinese students, and Indian students, and the amount of time that they spend preparing their academics and college for the workforce. And this is a global economy. As much as this political wrangling gets into it, we have to be able to compete against other places across the globe. And we know that New York State population is declining. Why? Because, well, there's a number of factors, but I've got 5 children. I want them to be able to stay in the area. I want them to be able to get a good job here. And employers want to stay here because it's a beautiful region. You know, we have all the benefits of being New Yorkers without the traffic and the smog, right? So, this institution is preparing these kids for the next generation. And I would say this, my experience, you know, I had opportunities to lead. I was one of the editors for the literary magazine. I was a student tutor and then a professional tutor. These types of experiences really catapulted me and got me prepared for that next round going forward, because I was like, now I found what I want to do. And I can also say my wife just graduated from the nursing program in May. And I will tell you this, she's been at the hospital for 3 years now, started as a PCA, and then moved into the RN division. There are a number of nurses that she's had the opportunity to work with that did not make it into this very rigorous program, right? My mother graduated from the nursing program. And this is a field, and again, I can tell you with authority because my poor wife comes home exhausted every day. Nursing, it is a field that is in high demand, and it's extremely difficult job. And I will tell you this, my wife passed her NCLEX on her second try. The first one, I think she just went about it a little bit wrong, but the second one she passed, and I think our passing rate for the RN program is very high. So there's a number of nursing students that try to get into this program, and the standard is high. That's outstanding. Plus, you know, this institution is a well-oiled machine. We have a number of veterans working on campus who to be very frank, set a standard for our students and our employees, like how to get stuff done. And I think we really can look to them and say, you know what, maybe there's something to this. And I would hope that we recognize that the community college have the ability to be nimble enough to recognize the needs of the community, you know, cybersecurity and other fields that are opening up that are going to provide jobs for this region. So I would say that this is certainly an institution that's worth investing in. We're surrounded by very bright and hardworking people, both faculty and staff. So this is, it's radically changed my life. And I'm very fortunate to be able to come back and contribute to the community in the way I do. And because I'm on the ground, pretty much on a daily basis, finding veterans and seeing how I can help them. There's a number of veterans out there that don't use their GI Bill benefits. That's a whole swath of the population that could be, you know, they might not necessarily, you know, desire to go on to a master's degree, but an associate's automatically, if we look at the statistics, raises your income level right off the bat. Okay. And when we have advocates like myself and other personnel on the staff going out and saying like, hey, you really should think about attending here, not only, you know, dollar for dollar, probably the best investment you could ever make, but you're going to get it back tenfold when you're finished. So I'm hoping I made the case. Thank you for inviting me.
And just quickly, you know, sometimes you may not know the full comprehensive nature of all that we do. And, you know, we've been in the business of also supporting small business startups for many years. And that's been another great collaboration with the LDC, the Warren County Economic Development Corporation, and our continuing education department. Just a couple highlights on our startup EDK. Used to be, I think it used to call micros. Yeah,
Micro enterprise.
Startup EDK is just so much better. But you know, this is a 10 to 12 week program to help budding entrepreneurs. And you can see on the slide here some of the businesses that have been launched out of that program. That's at very low cost to the participants. It creates a considerable network of small business owners to work together and support each other. And as we know, in this region, small business is what really is the backbone of our economy. The idea that we're going to attract large corporations into this region is just not a path that would be nice maybe in some ways, but we also know that small businesses bring so much to this community. So wanted to just point out a couple of recent graduates, and we'll be getting, if you haven't already, to get our Roots publication. The entire publication this time is devoted to supporting small businesses in the way in which we do. And then finally, this is just a smattering of some of the corporations and businesses and small non-for-profits that hire our students. And of course, we span a lot of the region, and also, of course, go all the way down to the capital region, but most of our graduates stay here. 80% of them are working in our service area, and we're very proud of that. So with that, I will stop, and I'm going to turn it over to Anne-Marie, but I'm happy to answer any questions regarding my slides. But again, I want to thank Jared and Jeremy, and you know, we've had days coming. Thank Jared and Jeremy for their time and effort and their support of the college. And so with that.
Chris, if you don't mind me interjecting, Jeremy brought up our NCLEX pass rate. That's the nursing RN exam. First quarter of this year, 97.06%. And if you want some context, the national average 79%, New York State average 73%. Again, we were at 97% pass rate on the first try. So pretty remarkable. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. I'm going to follow up on something else Jeremy mentioned. It's in an earlier slide of yours. Over a working lifetime, the increase in earnings as a result of an associate's degree at an undiscounted value is over $250,000 for a student. That's fairly significant. Those are taxpayers in our regional economy. So the economic impact and return on investment. This isn't new information for those of you in the room. As Dr. Duffy mentioned, you are friends to the college. You've seen this presentation before. At this point, it's actually a little old. The numbers are a little old, so I can promise you they would be higher if we updated them today, and we are looking at doing that in the near future. But $142 million of total income added to the region. We generate more in tax revenue than we appropriate, not something that can be said for most things that you as county officials likely invest in. 2,247 jobs supported in the region. It's a 4% rate of return for taxpayers, but a 16% rate of return on investment for students. You're not going to get that rate of return for almost anything that you're going to invest your money in. So for a student today, investing in themselves is the best thing that they can do. And they really can't do that, most of them, without your support, which is why we're here today. The long-term financial plan, a look back to 2017. That was the first time that Dr. Duffy and I, with Eric's help, presented to you the 10-year financial forecast for SUNY Adirondack. It demonstrated a $1 million structural deficit in our operating budget and really laid out what we called the shared pain model at the time, or the three-pronged approach to long-term fiscal stability. It called for predictable, stable state aid that was not enrollment-based, and steady increases in tuition and fees. We have achieved those. We're still working on the state aid piece, but it has been predictable and stable for the last few years. I can say that. And it has not been enrollment-based. Personnel and benefit expenses limited to a 2% increase. You'll see in a later slide that we've actually reduced our personnel and benefit expenses since that time. And then the last piece of that, as Dr. Jablonski likes to say, three-legged stool, was an increase in sponsor share. And that is the one item of the three that we are still seeking to obtain and what we're asking you for today. Without action, that operating budget deficit became unmanageable after the current year, and the fund balance was exhausted by 2026. That is not the position we're in today because of the federal stimulus funds that we received as part of the COVID-19 relief. And that did add some funds to our fund balance that we'll be using over this year. You'll hear that from me when I present the operating budget to you, and probably next year as well. Some information about your sponsor's contribution. Again, this is a slide that you've seen from us before. Warren County's contribution is about 6.4% of our total operating expenses. Washington County's contribution represents about 4.7% of our total operating expenses. That sponsor contribution, we are grateful for the 2% increase you give us each year, but it does not keep pace with annual increases to salaries and benefits, which represent 80% of our operating budget. We are a very personnel-based business here. And as you can imagine with your own negotiating contracts, the cost is greater than a 2% increase per year. So over the course of time, that 2% has not kept pace with inflation and has resulted in really what is a decreased percentage of our total operating expenses as your sponsor contribution. At this point, it represents about 11% of our total operating budget. Any questions about that? A peer comparison for you. I'm not sure that we've actually presented this detail to you previously. We have given you averages. I received some questions about, what are the sponsor contributions of our peers. So I gather that information to present to you here today. You'll note that of our peer group, SUNY Adirondacks percent of total revenue as a sponsor contribution is the lowest at just over 11%. The dollar value of your contribution, $3.6 million, is the lowest. And that does directly impact our chargeback rate, which is another thing we talk about pretty frequently. At almost every meeting I get asked, but we pay so much in chargebacks to other colleges. Why is that? And it really is, there's another slide about that in just a moment we'll highlight, but it is a direct correlation to the sponsor's contribution and enrollment. And I also showed you here the fall full-time head count, so you can see that information as well. One thing I wanted to highlight, as a dual sponsor, Columbia Green sponsor share represents about 43% of their total operating revenue, $6.4 million. Their fall full-time headcount was 437. I'm not saying that's where we want to be, but look at their chargeback rate. So that just is a demonstration for you about what the sponsor's contribution does as an impact to the chargeback rate that gets charged to every other county that sends a student to SUNY Adirondack. And here is that information for you. So right now, every $1 of county support generates $1.20 from other counties. The largest county that we receive chargeback revenue from is, of course, Saratoga County. Currently represents $2.5 million, a greater amount than Warren County or Washington County. The percent of our budget that they support, 7.6% in operating revenue. Again, greater than either of our sponsor counties individually. Some of the other community colleges that I get asked about their chargeback rate, someone said to me, we're paying an awful lot to Herkimer. Herkimer's chargeback rate has gone up 167% since 2017. That is directly related to an increase in their sponsor contribution and a drop in their enrollment. Hudson Valley Community College's rate has gone up 100% since 2017. In comparison, SUNY Adirondacks has gone up 48% since that time. We have not lost as much sponsor enrollment as those other three colleges, and that does impact the formula as well. But again, it's directly related to your sponsor contribution, which is one of the reasons that we're here today asking you to increase that. State aid. I attend a lot of meetings where people say, but it will be nice when the state starts to do their share. And I usually say that. I have several slides that say I really need state aid revenue to increase. However, what the state would say to us is that they consider TAP, which is their financial aid to students, to be part of their aid to community colleges. And in fact, they do represent it that way in their budget presentations. And when you redistribute SUNY Adirondack's revenue for TAP, their state aid goes up to $9 million, which exceeds 33% of our total operating revenue. It's actually at 37%. So they provide $7.8 million to the college in direct state operating aid and another $1.2 million in the form of TAP, which when I present our operating budget to you is represented as student tuition and fees. But if we were to redistribute that, this is what the pie graph would look like. The state would be providing 37% of the college's operating revenues, students 34, and the local percent at 29, made up from Warren, Washington County, et cetera. This also does not include something else. Oh, yes.
I'm pretty sure nobody in this room considers TAP as support of the college. It's support of the students. It's financial support of the students. It doesn't help you with operating costs or anything else. So I don't think that pie chart is very representative.
I would agree with you. The state would not. They consider it support to the college.
I talk about too, I understand.
I know.
For the sake of the record, I don't think any of us consider that part of the college, part of the state support to the college.
What I will say is that the majority of TAP payments, they do not go to the student in the form of a refund. They stay with the college in the form of tuition and fee. They're used to pay a student's tuition. So in essence, they do support the college operations because it makes up an amount of the student's tuition that they otherwise would not be able to pay and may not be able to attend.
Like saying the parents support the college. They pay their tuition.
So the other piece of that information that's not reflected is the state's contribution for capital. And that's not reflected in here, which is for the current year about $4.9 million. So depends on the audience, right? But each time we talk to the state about increasing their share, we receive this feedback back from them, but you're not counting TAP and we do, and you're not counting our share for capital and we do. And from the state's perspective, they look at that as a total package of aid to community colleges. I'm going to talk about capital for just a moment. I don't want to veer off in another direction from why we're here today, which is to talk about operating aid and not capital, which is a separate budget for us. But yet I feel like it's important to keep in the conversation. As we mentioned previously, per education law, capital expenditures are funded 50% by the state, 50% by local share. Local share consists of many things. The primary source is intended to be sponsor contribution to capital. In addition, you can use chargebacks, capital chargebacks received from other counties. It's $300 per FTE per year. It equates to approximately $300,000 at SUNY Adirondack. And then other private sources, including grants and fundraising. I've heard some questions about capital, and so I did a couple of calculations with Eric, and I'm just providing this to you as information. If you were not a sponsor, the amount you'd contribute to capital to SUNY Adirondack for chargebacks would be about $400,000 a year. If you gave us that each year as a sponsor, the NSTEM investment would have been paid for by 2019, and we'd have $1.2 million available as a college for other capital projects. So I've received that question before. I'm just providing that information back to you. The college has made $43 million in capital investments from 2015 to 2022. As a sponsor, you contributed $8.5 million to that for the NSTEM nursing project renovation. We're very grateful for that, but it represented 20 of the 50% of those capital investments. So while I'm not here today asking you for additional capital, I really want you to know that we invest in this community. We've been very creative. We find alternative ways to fund capital investments that directly impact your students, your community, and the resources that we provide that are available to you. And lastly, our request, you can calculate it many different ways. But as Eric and I say frequently, you're talking about pennies in the end, right? So The dollar amount, it doesn't materially change. We're asking you to please meet your commitment as our sponsors. The additional amount needed to match the average of our peers would be 1.35 million. The additional amount needed to match the 1/3 local share commitment when you take chargebacks into consideration is about 1.15 million. Those numbers vary slightly from what is about to be presented to you because that takes into account overtime over a period. This is if you were to do this today. But I think what you'll see is that the dollar value doesn't change substantially regardless of which calculation you use. Doesn't really kind of matter how we slice it or what we try to show. It's not really a material difference one way or another. And I've been asked some what ifs, so I just wanted to provide some information. What if we can't keep our commitment in the future? As sponsors, according to the New York State Community College regulations, you're responsible for approving our total budget, not on a line item basis, but the total budget. I bring that to you each year for approval. If you ever got to a place where you said, I can't continue to meet what we promised over this 5-year period, you have the authority to deny our budget. We would not want you to do that. We have conversations ahead of time. That certainly would be a precarious situation for us all to be in. But as partners, we work together very regularly to say, what sort of sponsor contribution should we be budgeting for this year? I heard kind of like, well, what if the college just keeps raising tuition? The intent of this request is to reduce the financial burden on your constituents, your students. Without an increase in your sponsor contribution, we will have to raise tuition 5 to 10% per year. We don't want to do that. The tuition increase this year is 5%. We're still going to have $1 million deficit in our budget with that increase. So it's imperative. We're at a place where we don't have a choice other than to raise tuition if we cannot access additional funds from our sponsors. And then what if we just increase our spending? What if we just continue to increase our spending? We're going to give you some more money, but how do we know that you're just not going to keep spending more and come back to us later and ask for more money? I would ask you to trust in us. We've been good fiscal stewards of our resources over a very long period of time. Our salaries have actually declined 2 to 4% since fiscal year 18-19. The goal for us was to limit it to a 2% increase per year. We've actually reduced them in response to a decline in enrollment. Our self-funded health insurance program has produced $600,000 a year in annual savings and significantly reduced the future liability in our financial statements. Warren County also has self-funded, at least I'm not sure about Warren County, Washington County, but I'm sure you're reaping the benefits of that as well. And our total operating budget has been essentially flat for 3 years and is $1.4 million less than it was in 1920 when our enrollment was slightly higher. And so we do expand and contract our operating budget as needed in relation to enrollment and other factors in our local region. And again, I'll go back to the first item on the list. You approve our operating budget on an annual basis. So you keep that line of communication open to say, are you happy with how we're fiscally operating the college? Can you continue to meet your investment, etc.? Any questions or comments about the financial information, which I find exhilarating, and I am sure everyone else preferred to hear Dr. Duffy's presentation. Yes.
The question, what if the college keeps raising tuition? Is there a tipping point in terms of where that could occur, where we create a situation where tuition based on the marketplace may be too high, which may discourage students from coming here? Or so I guess my point is, I guess it's maybe 2 or 3-fold. What has been the history? And it says it talks about potential increases of 5 to 10% in the future. I mean, what has been the history in the past of tuition increases and is, are we reasonable? Are we competitive? Does it all make sense?
Those are great questions. Thank you. I do think in the community college sector, we are reasonable and competitive. Our tuition is still right about on the top of the lower third, which really does match our total operating budget. So it's in line, I believe, with where it should be. If you compare that to the state operated campuses, that gap is closing. There's no denying that. So as far as our tuition increases historically, there have been many years where the college did not increase tuition and fees at all, including during the COVID-19 pandemic year. What our long-term financial plan calls for is an annual 3% increase in tuition and fees. What we've been able to demonstrate to our board of trustees is that when we had periods of time where we would keep tuition flat for 3 years, and then you'd see that it would have to increase 5 or 6% in 1 year. And it was very variable. It's not sustainable to keep it flat for long periods of time, and then you have a large spike. And so what we demonstrated to them was if we just went with a 3% increase per year over time, and individuals would know kind of that that's what it was, that was sustainable and actually had gotten us to the same place over a period of 10 years. So we've been aiming for 3% increases in tuition, not necessarily in fees. Those are a separate conversation. It's many times much less than 3% if there's any increase at all. But in tuition, mostly a 3% increase per year was what our goal is.
And I think, back to the TAP discussion, we're always trying to look at the maximum TAP award and making sure that our tuition isn't going over the maximum TAP. I don't remember the number, but there's probably 4 or 5 of our peers that are now, their tuition rate is now over the maximum TAP award. That's where that's kind of our bellwether, because then you're at least knowing you're accommodating your neediest students between TAP and Pell. But to Anne-Marie's point, probably our bigger concern is that the gap between the community college sector and the state operated campuses tuition is actually starting to narrow. And that does beg a question of, students making choices. Now, most students that attend the state operated campuses would need to live in housing, and that of course makes that price point much higher. But it is something that we regularly talk about as a sector. It's obviously out of our control what the state operated campuses do, but the TAP issue is the one that we really do pay attention to.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you reduce salaries, but that is more, we've actually raised what your people made. But it's because there's less students, things like that during COVID is why that's lower. But in the grand scheme of things, the whole idea is to rebuild the population of the students and putting more teachers in, more salaries than teachers out.
Absolutely. So as any business, we have fixed costs and variable costs. Unfortunately, we did reduce our number of personnel as a direct result of the decline in enrollment several years ago. But when enrollment continues to climb, then yes, we may need to add some of those items back.
We've had to increase our budgets for salary increases, percentage increases on people who are actually there, and we can't even fill the ones that we need. So it's like the point. So people are one and we'll wear it.
Yeah.
As a follow-up to Brian's question, salaries have declined since 2018, 2019. We're looking at the new increases in minimum wages and going forward, and certainly people are looking at higher salaries over the future just to get people to come to work. What do your projections show that's the impact it's going to have over the next 5 years? And that's a serious question.
It is. It's a great question. It's one that we're currently working through. If I were to say that we had what I felt to be a perfect plan, I would be being completely transparent with you, but we are currently working through that and what that will look like. But again, I'm not suggesting that, overall our salary and benefits will continue to decline. What I'm trying to demonstrate is that we take actions as necessary to expand and contract in relation to enrollment and our needs. So again, that's total salaries and benefits. And it doesn't necessarily equate to what someone is making either. Again, some of that is savings and benefits from just doing things differently, like self-insuring. So, and for the minimum wage increase, what that will mostly impact here at SUNY Adirondack are student wages. And we love employing our students.
I think there's a microcosm here too, that you're having to handle the actual event as it takes place. At the same time, educating our youth for those jobs around the whole region that are going to be the benefit factor of all that. And so I think that's an important issue here too, because the reason we're here, the reason that community college is here is to get employees for our local business. And I think as we sit in this room, as elected officials, we are the regional approach. The two counties together, we're the gateway to the Adirondack. We saw with 9/11 and with COVID, we saw a great amount of more interest in the reemergence of the Adirondacks. People want to get out of the city or move it into our communities. And there's going to be more businesses here in the region. And we're kind of the halfway point. People don't want to necessarily live in Albany and go to the Adirondacks. They might live here, work here, and still can recreate, have their recreational activities on the weekends or throughout the year in the Adirondacks. So I think it's a bigger picture here than maybe we looked at in the past. So I think the two counties come together. We've had these meetings. This is probably the biggest thing our two counties work on. Hopefully, we all go into doing all 30% thing. And we also have an IDA together, which seems to be taken off and getting more active lately, to the hire of some, to the desire of others. It's going both ways. So I think what I was trying to get out of the presentation today, and I hope you guys are all getting out of it, is what happens if we do nothing, and what is the result if we actually take on this proposal. And this isn't, it's kind of funny the way it was worded when we started the last 2 or 3 years. 6 or 8 years ago, we were having these discussions, just not with a plan and a broader scope of where we're at today. We've been here a long time seeing this. We knew it was coming. We just didn't know how it was coming or how we were going to handle it. So I think that's probably a good segue into getting where we are with the sheet that we have in front of us. That's what I agree. Well, our treasurer couldn't be here because he's the finance school, probably your treasurer.
She's right here.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So anyway, we worked with Al, putting out the sheet, and it shows where all the money is that it's going to take to get there. And we tried to find an approach where it was the same amount, so it was like a decreasing percentage of what we give in the budget, but it will actually get you to where you got to go. I don't know if everyone's comfortable with that number, not comfortable with that number, but it's probably a necessity to get us to the level that we need to be to get there. We had some good meetings, and it's pretty much self-explanatory, and I don't know if Melissa wants to go whatever, but I just want to put it out there that it's been in collaboration with the two counties. This is our proposal to meet their request. And so that's how we got here. And
Yeah, and to, also mention that, this is in no way assuming that both colleges are in support of this increase. We were just trying to put our heads together, both counties, to come up with a solution, if that is the direction that both counties want to go in. So looking at the worksheet, the top obviously shows Warren and Washington's contribution to the college along with the total amount. You see right now it's 3.7, and we're looking to get to the 5.3, which is the request of the college. I think the columns that are probably more interesting to most are the ones below that, where it shows Warren in blue, Washington in green, and then the operating chargebacks. So in the annual budget increase will be the amount that has to be added each year. It is cumulative, so that would be in the next column. So that really shows what would have to be budgeted each year to get that contribution rate up to the $5 million. If there's any questions, or if anyone wants to talk about the approach or the results.
Melissa, can we ask Al to add a column to the side of the Warren and Washington counties right here to show what the percentage increases are?
Sure. Yes.
They're, oh, they're up there, okay, sorry. They're about. That's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
That's the easy button.
So for Warren County, we've seen this several different ways. At one point, we talked about we need to increase, we need $5 million, and another was to increase to 15%. This gets us basically to that point. So roughly all the different approaches we've used in the past, this approach gets us there. It's based on full-time equivalents. You know, we talked in the past also about using equalized full value. EFD is more appropriate if we're talking about capital projects, not about sponsor share. So that's, we use the FD approach on this. And that's where you see on the first column, the 27% Warren, 20% Washington.
And to help explain with that, that was how we get to our, that is our portion of our third. And so it's not gonna add up to 100 because of the portion of it there. To further some of that, when Al put these numbers together, we were looking at all different ways, and there was, I mean, we could just add it all in 1 year. It doesn't really look feasible for us to do that. But at the same time, in our county, if you remember when we did the capital or the capital for the STEM, at that time was when we Washington County's 0.25% on mortgage tax came into play. And right now in our county, a third of that's been put away in those 3 years in that service account. So it's, for us, it's probably not even an issue of funding it because the funding is coming into that mortgage tax. So, and we're also going to be trying to stay under that 2% cap. So it's more about prioritizing your money in the future of the county. This is a big picture item. This isn't the normal line by line where, oh, we're going to cut a few here, we're going to cut a few there. No, this is, where do we want to be 10 years from now? When we write our budgets, of course, we have to get it past that certain year. But the idea is, we're going to make it under the cap. I know I am. I'm sure Frank's trying that too. I don't think anybody's trying to overrate the cap. But we're not destitute by any means. When we went into COVID, coming into that, it looked like the sky was falling. Everything was going to go away. Our counties actually survived that better than most. The college survived it better than most. There was a lot of money that came to our region from all that. And so it's put us in a good position, but we can't waste that position. We have to invest in a way that in the future, we're better off because of the investment that we just went through it. Just made it. We've all made those mistakes before. We can be so frugal, when we go cheap, we lose. And so I think in the big picture, this fits where I think the county should go and where I think the region should go and where the college should go. So if you're in agreement, I hope we're going to pass this. And if you're not, we need to have that discussion and more dialogue, see what it is that's not being fulfilled by this process or by staying the same if you feel something's not being done by the college, but fulfill the process. So, right.
Are there any comments from Warren County supervisors? We've been kind of quiet.
That's because I'm trying to think all the time.
Well, but you know, one of the people from Warren County have heard me all the time speaking about what kind of a gem this institution is. And I think we need to, like I said, all my peers have heard this. The economy that we have is pretty hot. We have needs. We have workforce needs. We have housing needs. We have transportation needs. We have all sorts of needs. Those needs are throughout the country. Everyone else has them. So how do we maintain our economy? Not necessarily grow, but how do we maintain what we have? In my belief, this institution gives us a leg up on many because they're exposed to our communities, our region, and if we're smart, we can attract them to stay here. Because that's one of the biggest issues that all our businesses have. We heard it earlier today with one of the speakers that was here. It's hard to get qualified people. We have an institution here that helps us get the qualified people that we need. So again, does anyone in Warren County have an issue with moving forward with this or questions? I'm not sure what the process is, but not seeing any, I think we're ready to.
If I may.
Of course, thank you.
So just to concur with Finance Chair of Washington County and to say it in another way, this is proactive. We are in a good financial position right now economically. We are not facing any real crisis, huge crisis. And this is the time to do this advanced planning. I think we are all in support of the value of the Adirondack to our community here and what it provides. And government is very well known to not act until there is a crisis. And for us to be here at this point in time, sitting together, coming out with a well thought out plan on how to get to where we could be competitive in the future, we should be proud of our efforts and supportive of these efforts as well.
I think we also have to look at our workforce. And our workforce is there's a huge demand for people there. And as a reaction, a lot of employers are trying to find more automated ways to do their work, produce their goods. If their goal is made so they can keep on increasing their part in the state of Washington County. And as that happens, there's going to be more and more need for more education because there's going to be more skills required. And I think that we have a gem here and here in looking at how we can help prepare our students who are going out in the world to get some education so they can better themselves and they can find jobs to stay here. And also, as a result, we'll be able to have more economic development because we'll have the skilled people and trained people and educated people to keep up with the demand for those people. If not, they're going to go someplace else.
Will you look at my sheet?
Right.
So my notes on that is we're in the time right now known as the Great Retirement. We got 10,000 seniors that are retiring every single day, okay, in this country. As a result, those retirees are working businesses that are entrepreneurial businesses. They're bricklayers, they're construction workers, they're carpenters. Those are the jobs where we need them to have the business acumen to be able to run their own businesses. So startup at 80K is a huge opportunity for us to take advantage of that. I'd like to see us promote more of that into our school systems here to promote that. Once that's a big thing. Who needs to find a bricklayer? Who has a bricklayer who's under the age of 40 that they can suggest? Bricklayers, and that's the reason why retirement age is being pushed at 67, is because we don't have those hands-on workforce people to be able to take on those responsibilities. Everybody wants to be a TikTok influencer. I'm the youngest person in the room here. I think that Juan is not, younger than me, but there's an importance there, and that has to be what's pushed through. I feel this is a great opportunity for us to at at the finance level to keep the school in good standing. But I think we need to do more promotion in the start of ABK, how we can get more of the students that are in our community, to stay in our community and take on these entrepreneurial roles.
Yeah, Chairman Campbell, so is our intent here today, the finance committee, to make a recommendation to move this to the whole board? Well, we probably start with the college committee and then finance.
I have a question on that, Brian, if you don't mind. So the college is on a fiscal year, we're on a calendar year. How does this impact the current budget we're in?
Not at all.
Okay, so it starts next year.
Their budget,
This is a plan that we're gonna embrace. It's not particularly a commitment because you gotta bring it forward in the fall. Say next year, we're gonna increase it by $125,000. You gotta figure out how that's gonna pass our board,
we
right?
honestly need a commitment because this is a 5-year plan.
The commitment's only as good as who's sitting in the room right now, as opposed to who could be here 3 years from now,
That's
right?
true.
Okay, so this is still, we're trying to make a commitment as best we can to the college with this plan moving forward. Correct? It's just based upon a flat
2%.
budget or a 2% increase in your budget over the course of this.
Right.
So that's already factored in.
Yes. So these numbers might actually be a little bit higher than what they actually are.
They've got 0%. So we know that it's conservative in will work. But we would like to move the program, not just the year. We would like to get complete buy-in. That, so in other words, they're gonna be wondering, well, what's coming next?
But the wording of the resolution is going to be critical to say.
Yeah. But from the Washington County College Committee, I'd like to move this to finance, recommending we approve this.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
So finance committee.
We did this, but there's, you want Warren County to do the
Yeah,
same thing?
your college go first. We'll go back.
All right, so let's bring a motion forward. You want to make it? I'll think we're at. Another one, once we capture. Right?
I'd be happy to move it forward. I started this process in 2020 and got interrupted by the China virus. So I'm glad to see that it's actually going to happen.
Okay, fantastic, thanks. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Okay,
So that's that.
Our finance committee now, who was in all, they put two good, any more discussion on it? All things say aye. Opposed? Carried.
Finance Committee, resolution, bringing to the floor. Supervisor Thomas, thank you. Supervisor Runyon on the second, any discussion? And I'm sure we'll coordinate the drafting of these resolutions with Washington County, correct? Okay. No further discussion, call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None, motion carries from finance.
Emotional, but my Kevin here, I just want to thank you so much for getting us to this point. This has been a lot of conversation, all our incredible colleagues, and I assure you that you are in good hands in the college managing any sort of increase. So thank you so much. It means so much to our students and the people that come here every day.
I think one thing more I'd like to say is this is gonna be a bigger deal when it gets to the full board. On both. You know, they say that. But I think what we also realize is this isn't just about the students and the workers, it's also the elderly and the newborn. This is gonna be, this is how we keep our hospital going. This, I had questions from you, why do I wanna support that, you know, I fill out the school taxes, why do I wanna support it? It's because all of the services they need. When you start, it's over, are being provided, and it's workers from the situation. And I think that's important that we stress that going forward, that it's not just about a certain group, it's every spectrum of every group in our local communities. And also people that are transitioning in the middle of their careers. number of people gone back to school to become nurses. And there are people who look at this really quick, you know.
As Dr. Duffy said earlier, if you have a chance before you head back to your homes, offices today, take a look at the athletic facility. That's a catalyst for, in my opinion, for increasing enrollment at the college. In addition to the college's commitment to working with the business community, labor in preparing people for the trades to go into business. All of those are going to increase enrollment. That's going to be a good thing for all of us.
So Bill, we're gonna count you as a positive vote in 2 weeks.
I'm not on either committee for yes. You got me. You got me.
I think we're all set. Motion to adjourn.
That we don't hear. What's that? No, I know.